Hi. Uh, Before I start, I want to define a couple terms. Let's start with AI. I understand that the term AI is used in popular discussions when we're actually talking about large language models or machine learning, which can vary greatly in type, design, and purpose. So, yes, I do understand there's a difference between generative AI and something like GLaDOS. So before you jump to tell me, actually, that's not AI. Yes, I know. It's become a bit of a catch-all term, but if it works for the writer of the Substack piece I'm critiquing, then it works for me and anyone watching this. So, anyway, the second term I want to address is art. It's a word like love or freedom. It'll mean different things to different people. I think so many different things can be considered art, and it's so subjective, it's almost pointless to, really debate. I think the harder to define it becomes, the less useful it becomes as a term. So that's why in this video I'll be speaking more on real art or genuine art, because I'm speaking about something a little bit more specific. Anyway, this video started out as a standalone video idea I've had for a really long time, but then a couple weeks ago I stumbled onto this video by a static studio called Cocky AI Artist Gets Cooked by the Entire Internet that really reignited my interest in covering this topic. In it, there is an AI artist who tries to make a point about how AI art isn't soulless, with an example of some wonky looking AI generated animation. People ratioed him into oblivion, but instead of backing off, he doubled down and started arguing with folks and grandstanding. I'll get back to him. For this video, from the beginning, I always wanted to respond to thought out good faith arguments for AI art, preferably from someone that calls himself an artist. I've watched several debates on the topic as the AI conversation has gotten larger and more serious, but after doing some searching, after seeing the Static Studio video, I found what I was looking for with Andy Masley's Substack piece titled A Defense of AI Art. I'll link the entire thing in the description, and I just want to say right off the bat, even though I strongly disagree with much of what is said by Masley, I respect the fact that he sat down and wrote out thought-out arguments instead of being a snarky git on Twitter or in some YouTube comments somewhere. So, let there be no delay. This is my response to a defense of AI art. Masley opens up with a distinction. He writes, I think there are two categories of art. 1. Art that's challenging or interesting or emotionally engaging. 2. Art that's just pleasant to look at without any real depth. This post will be about the second category. I haven't seen any AI art that I consider challenging or interesting, but I've seen a lot that I find pleasant. I wouldn't want to automate away art that's intentionally created by a human to challenge me or draw me into ways of thinking about the world I couldn't otherwise access. But a lot of my and others' engagement with art isn't like that. A lot of everyday people are often just looking for pleasant images or sounds. While it is true that we interact with art in different ways, I think to view art in this way is to sort of contentify it. Content is separate from art because while art, yes, is oftentimes commodified and monetized, content exists solely to drive engagement and money. Content is purely functional, while art interacts with the world and other art in more layered and complex ways, coming from a person or people. This is why I don't like the term content creator, but that's a different subject. Obviously, there's a ton of overlap between art and content, but I think the distinction comes down to the context it exists in and the intention behind it. Masley continues, it's okay that people spend time listening to lo-fi hip-hop beats when they want to relax, and it's okay that it's easy and cheap to mass produce those. I don't see why we wouldn't want to produce a lot of additional pleasant pictures on demand if it makes people happy. My question to this argument is, are people losing out because they can't have instant access to something that is just, to use your words, pleasant to look at without any real depth, when there are many downstream effects of this technology being embraced, be it economic, cultural, or environmental? To get to the point, my question here is the happiness some people get from creating or consuming AI content worth the costs? Because at the end of the day, I just don't see the benefits of more AI content being made and circulated around. If we want more art and artists, I think there are many other things to consider, but we'll return to this point. Let's continue. It might be that human artists can use AI to produce challenging work that would fit the first category. In that case, I'd consider the AI to just be another medium, like paint or clay, that the human is using and refining to get at a very specific aesthetic experience. I haven't really seen that type of art yet, but would be open to it if and when it arrives. I kinda think you're contradicting yourself here. In your opening, you said, I wouldn't want to automate away art that's intentionally created by a human to challenge me or draw me into ways of thinking about the world I couldn't otherwise access. But now you're saying that even if AI art does encroach on that territory, you would be open to it when it arrives. So which is it? Do you not want meaningful art to be automated away, or is AI art just another medium, like drawing, that you're open to automate away people that actually draw? Masley writes, I think what's actually happening here is a lot of people sharing AI art are just average people with an average person's level of appreciation for art, which is often pretty cringe and far from what artists and art critics would consider high quality. Obviously this is elitist, but I think it's true. I think what's actually happening here is that critics of AI are just reacting to the tackiness of everyday people's taste and incorrectly blaming AI for that tackiness. AI has in some ways democratized access to creating art, so we should assume that a lot of its output will be much lower quality by the standards of the elite. Okay, one, yes, it does sound kind of elitist, but this argument does hold some truth to it. I do think that a lot of the people creating AI content are just regular people with little interest in the craft of music or illustration or animation, but there lies the problem. If we as artists and consumers alike are promoting AI art, we're doing the tech bros' job for them. They are perfectly positioned to cleave away at real artists' work and rights if we promote this. We often don't have control over the levels of power, especially in the world of tech. Like, who decided our chargers have to change every 2 years? Who decided that each printer had to have its own ink cartridges? Who decided to make replacing a phone's battery a potentially deadly task? My point is, we can point to the consumer and say they have crap taste, but that doesn't really address the problem. You're simply pointing to the lower tastes of everyday people as a reason why people don't like AI content. But if people's tastes were better, the content created with AI would still be made in the same unethical anti-artist way. Nevertheless, it's those average people with an average person's level of appreciation for art that are the ones calling the shots. Those people are the types of people at the top. That's why they gravitate toward AI. It's a business, and if we don't pump the brakes, AI art will continue to get the institutional support. If we keep going in the same direction, artists will be left in the dust, unable to get their art seen or their bills paid at all from it, because some guy in a suit is always going to choose the cheap and mass-produced option.
Plus, do you know how hard it is to push an artist? They gonna tell you, I don't want to do that. Jimmy Iovine famously told me one day, get you something that don't talk back. What is better than an AI artist that don't talk back?
Personally, I think many people do want art made by people, and yes, sometimes they want art with more substance. For as long as we've been making and consuming art, we've liked art that works on various levels. Sometimes we just want to dance, sometimes we want our heartstrings pulled, and sometimes we want to break down a verse line for line. Tastes will vary, but for the people at the top that are making all these decisions, it's not even a part of their equation. It's not even on their mind. Masley writes, AI is trained on the work of millions of artists. It's fed an incredible number of images from across the web to build their intuitions about what we want it to produce, and then it produces art based on the vibes it picked up from those images. Is this a form of theft against the human artist? He then refers to several generated images of trees and goes on to say, my claim here will be that if AI works like the first example, where it picks up on the subtle, interesting artistic vibes of a lot of different works and incorporates them into new works, it's not stealing those works in the same way I wouldn't be stealing from art I was inspired by. This argument is one I've heard quite a lot, that humans take the work of other artists and create their own art from that, and that's exactly what AI models do. I disagree with this entirely. While we do incorporate different works into our own, we are taking from more than other pieces of art. we're taking from more than our direct and clear inspirations, but from a million different sources of inspiration, be it other art, moments, dreams, conversations, relationships, etc. The question of art and originality has a long history, and I'm no expert on it. But to be honest, I don't appreciate anyone jamming a pro-AI stance into that complex and nuanced conversation. For example, even the way that we recall things is complicated, because as studies have shown, and for example this old TED Talk discusses, human memory is very flawed.
Many people believe that memory works like a recording device. You just record the information, then you call it up and play it back when you want to answer questions or identify images. But decades of work in psychology has shown that this just isn't true. Our memories are constructive. They're reconstructive. Memory works a little bit more like a Wikipedia page. You can go in there and change it, but so can other people.
But my point is that the human brain isn't, despite what some people like to say, a computer. Hell, we're still trying to figure out so much about the human brain. Yes, the line between originality and plagiarism isn't a hard line. And yes, humans take from other things to create. But isn't that process the way we take from various sources, experiences, and feelings and create from that? Isn't that what makes art art? AI pulls from the work of other artists most often without their consent or pay and generates new work from that. Yes, there's layers of complexity between input and output, and I'm aware that there's somewhat of a sliding scale in terms of human input with different AI methods. But that is generally what's happening. Some level of input from a human, very marginal in the case of programs like Suno or Midjourney, given to a program that renders an output. I think using words like intuition obscure what's happening here. It humanizes the technology. I'm not even sure I like the word learning to be applied to this technology. And just think about the amount of data that an LLM can hold and it's pulling from. It's unfathomable. There's no transparency or crediting or kickback. So yes, theft is a fine term to use. Make your programs as complex as you want. I'm calling it as I see it. Masley continues, intellectual property is by definition not really a scarce resource once it's created. If I write a blog post, I'm not affected by people copying and pasting it somewhere else. Maybe they would get some credit that I deserve instead, but that's very different from me being deprived of something physical. I and others can still access the information whenever I want. Maybe it doesn't matter to you that someone copies and pastes your work and puts their name on it, but it's 100% still the ethical thing to credit the original writer. And despite your feelings, if I copied and pasted an article of anyone's, sold it myself and made bank, I think they'd be rightly bothered. I think we have seen throughout history way too many people not get credited or paid for the contributions that they've made, whether it be in the field of art or outside of art. And AI is almost the ultimate example of this, because it not only takes their work and uses it, but it hides them. I understand the relationship between art and commerce is complicated, but at the end of the day, that is someone's labor, and they should be credited, at least unless they say otherwise. He goes on, the main argument for having some IP rights, incentivizing creation of valuable intellectual work, is convincing, but I worry there are too many cases where IP rights are clearly disincentivizing new creative work. However, even if I didn't want to reduce IP protections, the call for art to be protected from training AI is not only a demand to keep IP protections as they exist, it's a call to radically expand IP protections. It's equivalent to requiring everyone viewing art on a website to sign a legal document saying that not only that they won't directly copy the art they're looking at, they won't even produce anything inspired by the general vibe of what they're seeing. Okay, again, you're conflating someone making art inspired by other art to someone using AI that's trained on someone else's work. And I do not consider these things the same. I don't think anyone has or should ever have to sign anywhere to be inspired. However, to use someone else's work to train AI models, that is a completely different story. He continues, this would radically restrict the art that gets made. I would personally like a lot more and more varied art to exist, and would like our IP laws to incentivize that, regardless of who or what is producing the art in the first place. To put it briefly, a conversation about IP to me is a little bit off the beaten path. What we really want to talk about is art and labor. I don't doubt there are issues with IP rights, but when it comes to art and AI, the concern is people's art being used without consent or payment to train AI models with. The point still remains. If our art is going to be fed into AI models, they should have to ask first and potentially pay for it. They cannot operate with no guardrails, no reins, no controls, no nothing. Suno AI, an AI music program, has been sued over their theft of people's work without permission or compensation. Music Business Worldwide has been covering this beat for a while, and just recently put out another article titled Suno and Udio hit with class action lawsuits from independent artists, in the wake of another artist suing them. Here, they address the previous lawsuits levied at Suno and Udio by music companies, saying, in June last year, the major music companies sued the AI startups in the US for allegedly training their systems using the company's recordings without permission, an accusation they pretty much admitted to in court filings last August. Most recently, Justice's complaint states, rather than simply license these copyrighted songs like every other tech-based business does, Suno/Udio elected to simply steal the songs and generate AI sound-alike music at virtually no cost to Suno/Udio. If artists could indefinitely make money off the art they contributed to a language model, then we'd be having a different conversation. I'd still likely have issues, but that's not the situation that's in front of us. And you're clear in that last sentence. You want more stuff out there. You want more art to exist. And I do too. But I do care about who or what is producing it in the first place. And if that who is getting compensated for what they create. Especially when that original work is being profited off of, likely by men in offices with no real interest in art or culture. I do think there's a cost with how we move forward here, so we need to step very carefully when it comes to this stuff. Masley writes, AI gives everyday people the ability to produce a lot more art that's refined to their specific individual taste. It's like we've magically given everyone a much greater artistic ability. AI art tools make a lot of people happy and excited about the art they produce. This is a big deal. It's like we've discovered a new magical artistic medium that a lot of people really enjoy using. Our baseline reaction to that should be positive. This is another aspect of our current societal direction that I touched on in The Streaming Trap. I ask the question, what is the price of convenience? I definitely plan to revisit this question more on this channel, but I bring it up now because of what Masley says in this last passage. AI art gives people the ability to produce a lot more art that's refined to their specific individual taste. When I see this, I have to ask, do we want that? Do we need that? Is that actually good for us? In this modern era, we are drastically overstimulated, and we've been trained to expect a high level of stimuli, be it from online shopping to music and movies, at increasingly high speeds. And not only this, but our relationship with art itself has shifted. I talked in my video, What Should We Expect from Andre 3000, about my relationship with the discography of the band Arctic Monkeys and how the third album was a huge left turn for them, and it took me time to adjust to it, but when I did, it became my favorite album of theirs for a long time. And it actually played a role in broadening my musical taste. This is art we're talking about. Sometimes you get something and you have to wrestle with it. Sometimes you get something and you hate it. But that's part of it. I almost wrote a book after seeing a very flawed movie, a whole novel. There's still a video essay that I will do one day about a movie that pissed me off so much I felt like Goodwill stole from me. A perfectly tailored algorithm, however, would not give me these experiences. It would give me something between banal and mind-blowing. But in real life, with an organic relationship with art, we're exposed to things we don't like, or at least challenge us at times and places that we don't fully dictate. And that's part of the magic. But with AI, they're trying to make even the consumption of art more efficient. But is that really what we want? Is that really the point of all this? Why must we optimize every single process in our lives, even the processes we say we enjoy, like making or enjoying art? And does that optimization even serve us? But let's step back, because your argument here outlines your utopian dream of society where art is fully, quote, democratized. And I want to address that point as well. My main issue is that it reduces the whole existence and creation of art to the end product, and it sees art as primarily an individual and personal thing. But art is not just the end product. This is what I was teasing at in the intro, that real art involves both creation and perception, the creation of the thing as well as how someone sees it. In terms of creation, art is also the result of community, history, and culture. It's the whole messy, complicated, sometimes difficult process of creation, and even at its most simple, art is a reflection of the human condition. It's at least equal parts the end result and the context that brought it about, the context it exists in. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. Maybe content does, but art does not. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the first American animated feature film. It was mind-blowing when it was released to the public in 1938, but we might look at it now and critique it for a weak story or characters and how it's got nothing on Toy Story. Actually, Toy Story was mind-blowing in 1995 for being the first CGI animated feature film. But I've heard some people clown on how some of the animation's really dated and how it's got nothing on Inside Out 2's animation. You get my point. You have to look at these works in context. Disney was making a massive gamble with Snow White. Toy Story faced a ton of technical hurdles. They were literally writing the book on how to make a movie like that as they were making the movie. So, Masley says he's in favor of completely democratizing art, where there's an infinite amount of it available to everyone all the time. But the way I see it, not everyone should create art if they have no interest in creating art. If their only interest is the end product, I don't think they're artists, or at least not genuine ones, real ones. They just want some content to chew on in between shifts or while waiting in line at the grocery store. I don't think they want to be artists if they are so eager to cut out all the context around the work itself that gives it its value. There's something else, and that's okay. Call me elitist, but I think part of being an artist is your relationship with the process. I, as well as other AI critical people, prioritize the process. AI proponents seem to prioritize the end product more. I think it matters how you engage with this thing called creation. People like the Suno AI CEO are very clear in how they feel about creation.
It's not really enjoyable to make music now.
Why do you say that?
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music.
Do you not think that's like running? It is hard to run. It is painful to run. You don't particularly enjoy it, but you love running. And you get good at it, and you get better at it, and you speak to the runners, and they love running.
Most people drop out of that pursuit because it was hard.
Are we really giving that person any level of say in the realm of art? Suno may like to pitch themselves as for artists. Make music anytime, anywhere. Your ideas deserve the spotlight. Create, No. They are pro-content, not pro-artist. Companies like Suno are leeching off the work of hard-working artists to try and usher in a new wave of prompt engineers to replace them. Personally, I don't see the immense benefit Masley does when it comes to democratizing art, as he likes to put it. I think it undercuts the point of art from an audience perspective and an artist's perspective. My version of further democratizing art is to give people the resources to create art themselves, and if they opt into being an artist, they will do so. If not, maybe their interest is something else entirely. It's okay to not like something, and it's okay to be bad at something. It just means you've got to try your hand at something else, or get better.
Get better! Get better! Get better! Chicken shot.
If the issue is that someone desperately wants to create art but lacks the time or resources, then their issue is elsewhere, like the fact that their job and home life is too overbearing, or that they can't afford or find an instrument. The issue is not, am I able to create images or music on demand that can give me a specific aesthetic experience? The issue is, do I have the time and resources to make the art I want to make? Am I able to sustain myself and also be passionate about something? Can I meaningfully explore my creative side and still pay the bills? Our goal shouldn't be to offload the creative process to machines, watering down the process for people that have never given it a second thought and closing the door on the people trying to make a living. It should be to empower artists as laborers, and yes, also to encourage and allow more people to create art if they want to. We should be raising the bar for society, not lowering the bar for creating an image or song so low that actual art and artists are devalued and lost in the shuffle. Defenders of AI honestly shouldn't be primarily concerned with defending it and arguing over whether it should be encouraged or embraced by the public. If they really care about art, but still want to push AI, they should be investigating and scrutinizing over who owns these tech companies and what their intentions are, holding them to account, because if you ask them how they feel about art, they'll tell you.
It's not really enjoyable to make music.
Your priority should be over the future of this technology and where it's headed. Masley says near the end of his piece, people will often talk about problems with new technology without being clear that the problem is that the technology is making everyday people too free and able to do what they want. Everyday people being given the inexpensive, powerful tools to do what they want is extremely good, and it also creates problems. I agree. Everyday people being given inexpensive, powerful tools is a net positive, while also sometimes creating problems. In general, though, I don't think technology itself is the problem. I think our problems very often run downstream from our society, our politics, etc., and are filtered through the technology we have and are exposed to. Technology can obviously have huge effects on society, but I typically don't see it as the sole driving force behind its effects. I think we too often give too much credit to technology for things that we see in society when it's more of a back and forth relationship. The context the technology exists in is what gets us the outcomes. The technology we see that gets made is shaped by our society. Every piece of tech and how it functions is not just neutral. You know how people say everything's political when talking about art? I think technology is like that too, and our relationship with it is more a loop than it is a straight line. Allow me to use an analogy. This is footage I took of the interstate near where I used to work. This was some years back. At the time, I didn't have a car, so I did a combination of taking the bus and riding my bike to get to and from work. Look at all these cars. Is the existence of this highway, of all these cars chugging along, some inevitable thing? No. Cities in the US are built a certain way which promotes car culture. Meanwhile, I have friends in places like New York that I wouldn't dare let drive my car because I've got enough bills to pay and I like my spine the way it is. Technology isn't moving along some cosmic progression timeline. It's contextual. In a society where the store is 5-minute walk away, who needs a car? Who would even think of such a silly thing? Subway trains can fit like 1,000 people. The hell is a sedan? When we see technology, we have to remember that it's not just some canon event. People like to say things like, we have to embrace the future. We can't just push away new tech. Don't be a Luddite. But that last phrase in particular just shows the misunderstanding people have in, well, one, what a Luddite is, and two, what a lot of people that are reticent towards so many called advances actually believe in. For the people that don't know, the Luddites were a group in 18th century England that opposed certain automated technologies, engaging in different forms of protests and actions, including the sabotaging of specific types of machinery. In Smithsonian Magazine's What the Luddites Really Fought Against, Richard Conniff writes, as the Industrial Revolution began, workers naturally worried about being displaced by increasingly efficient machines, but the Luddites themselves were totally fine with machines, says Kevin Benfield, editor of the 2004 collection Writings of the Luddites. They confined their attacks to manufacturers who used machines in what they called a fraudulent and deceitful manner to get around standard labor practices. They just wanted machines that made high-quality goods, says Benfield, and they wanted these machines to be run by workers who had gone through an apprenticeship and got paid decent wages. Those were their only concerns. This is a crucial point that I want to get across here. Yes, some people are skeptical of technologies in and of themselves, but for many, the concern goes deeper than that. Artists aren't the ones making most of the decisions about art, and if some of us are breaking the picket line to promote our own devaluing, then we're only helping to dig our own graves. The only reason Hollywood studios had to pump the brakes on what they were doing in 2023 is because a huge number of people, artists and non-artists alike, stood up for things like higher pay and not using AI in writing and content creation. They struck for months in 2023 and were able to get a lot of what they wanted. It was inspiring. It was an inspiring example of solidarity among writers, actors, and other creators. But if left to their own devices, corporations will cut artists out of the artistic process, the same way corporations cut the workers down at a restaurant to a skeleton crew but expect the same amount of work to get done. These Silicon Valley dipshit tech bros don't know a kick from a snare or aperture from shutter speed. They don't know Hanna-Barbera from Miyazaki. And they don't care either. They're not paid to care. I'm all for promoting more people to make art, and the tools that we've been able to develop over generations of art are amazing, but I do not think reducing art to the end product, taking away artists' ability to learn and hone their abilities, and taking away artists' ability to make money from their craft is the way forward. So yes, let's be true Luddites, in that we don't hyper-focus on technology as the enemy, but understand that our enemy is much more human. To be clear, I'm not here to litigate each and every type of AI or machine learning use case, because I think there are times where these technologies can absolutely be used for good, especially outside the artistic realm. But to express my skepticism over this larger movement, who's driving it, and to what ends. Which brings us back to the beginning, because that is what makes our friend Oscar AI's clapbacks on Twitter so funny.
What matters is that I'm creative, and I always have been, in every artistic field, from poetry to film to visual art. That's why brands want to collaborate with me. I get so many collaboration offers, I can't even accept them all. That's why I get paid, and well. What matters is my artistic vision. Oh right, AI art has no value. It's just pushing buttons. Anyone can do it. Then tell me, why aren't you doing what I do? If it's so easy, why don't you? Oh, I see. You'd rather stay broke. The last romantic of the pencil.
Brother, I'm sorry to break it to you. You might have an artistic vision. I can't tell because all your posts are AI content, but the main draw to you from people wanting something that they can use is the fact that you can generate it very quickly and easily. They want something usable and fast. You are McDonald's, and you're talking like you're some renowned chef that handpicks their ingredients. What do you mean, why aren't you doing what I do? It's simple. They actually love drawing or singing or composing. What they're doing, real artists, what they're doing is something not everyone can do, which is part of what makes it worth doing, but I guess you fail to understand that. The fact that you've gotten paid for your content doesn't really mean anything. You're getting paid in spite of an artistic vision, not because of it. But you don't see that because the money validates you, not the art itself. And no matter how many artists ratio your ass on Twitter, you'll keep falling back on the fact that you're getting paid on the backs of other people's work while calling yourself one of them. But you're not. The real kicker for me was that last part, the last romantic of the pencil. First off, this is art, so if there's one place to be romantic, it's this. But let's dig into this because you made this a whole running gag for yourself. You write, if someone asks you to join the Church of the Sacred Pencil, kindly decline. But the image on this post is what I find interesting, because it evokes propaganda, which is a topic that has always fascinated me. In this post, you're referencing art and propaganda coming out of the USSR and the PRC in the 1940s and 50s. History and politics aside, many pieces of this kind would often depict large groups of people, the masses, standing proud, sometimes waving flags. For anyone that's not aware, in the case of the Russian Revolution, peasants and working class people overthrew the tyrannical Tsar in 1917, and the PRC, People's Republic of China, was formed in 1949 when people overthrew an unstable feudal system. And I find it interesting that you use this imagery and call the anti-AI people criticizing you cultists. Again, setting aside any historical or political debates, the art that came out of these movements was based around solidarity, people coming together for common causes, and being pro-labor and pro-worker. That was what it was aiming to communicate. Meanwhile, here you are on Twitter, bashing anti-AI people for not making money like you are with AI. Most of your posts just read like Mid-Journey ads, but many also ooze with an arrogant and exceptionalist mindset that places you at the top of this creative hierarchy where you've cracked the code and figured out how to make money with AI. And look, I'm not blind. I see the things that are being created with AI. It's progressed a lot in the last 10 years. Hell, the last 5. But looking through your tweets, all I see is someone who wants to be seen as a creative, as an artist, as a visionary, but fails, intentionally or not, to see that everything they're creating is a product of the work of thousands of artists that came before them. You tweeted when Akira Toriyama, creator of Dragon Ball, passed away in 2024. But to me, and many others, it reads as tone deaf, given that every day you churn out AI content trained on the work of artists such as him. Artists that have poured their souls into their work because they love it that much. And it's precisely those artists that don't get credit or a dime. But you got your back though. The real cult, in my opinion, is the one where people blindly embrace all new technology without any question to who's creating it, who's promoting it, and what their motives are. The real cult is the one where people put the pursuit of money above any principles or values and shames others for not doing the same. It doesn't make you ahead of the curve or forward thinking to embrace things mindlessly, to actively antagonize artists and AI critics, to boast about how you're actively helping to drive the market further toward AI is something that needs to be called out. And look, I don't know all that much about Toriyama, but if you want the respect of a Toriyama or a Miyazaki, maybe show some respect for fellow artists. But I forget, they're all dumb and poor. And look, you might think I'm overthinking the propaganda poster angle, but I don't think so. Intentionally or not, Oscar is likening art featuring revolutionaries that overthrew monarchy and feudalism and were pro-labor to cultists. In the same way, people reduce critics of new technology to being reactionary Luddites. You misunderstand the ideas of revolutionaries just like you misunderstand the Luddites. People wresting control from a dictator or people who attacked manufacturers who were trying to get around standard labor practices aren't cultists. They're just standing up for themselves. They aren't irrational, super radical wackos. They see themselves as fighting for a fairer world. Now, their methods might be questionable, and the results might be too, but the intent is clear. And the intent of artists is to create and share art with all its blemishes, speed bumps, and hurdles. We value the result and the process and paying our rent. The last paragraph of the Smithsonian article is as good as any to end this on, so I'm going to read it out in full. Conniff writes, "The original Luddites would answer that we are human. Getting past the myth and seeing their protests more clearly is a reminder that it's possible to live well with technology, but only if we continually question the way it shapes our lives. It's about small things, like now and then cutting the cord, shutting down the smartphone and going out for a walk. But it needs to be about big things too, like standing up against technologies that put money or convenience above other human values. If we don't want to become, as Carlyle warned, mechanical in head and in heart, it may help every now and then to ask which of our modern machines General and Eliza Ludd would choose to break, and which they would use to break them."